distribute it on the desk. Okay, cool.
Kia ora. Thanks everyone for coming along to the final session of the DevNet conference. We've got a quick DevNet forum meeting first, followed by the great debate, which is going to be chaired by none other than Professor Warwick Murray, who is somewhere here? Okay, here, he just walked out the room. Okay, no, you're fine. A few minutes, you've got a few minutes. I'd like to introduce Fong, who is the Program Manager for DevNet. Please give her a round of applause. She's helping us significantly to be able to offer a range of new opportunities through DevNet, which is very exciting, and you will have seen some of them promoted during this conference. But we wanted to make sure nothing went amiss with these. We're a charitable organisation. We as part of our organisational structure, we have a forum meeting at every DevNet conference. You're at that at the moment, and part of that is to let you know what we've been up to for the last 2 years, what the plans are for the next 2 years, and to get your input to what those plans might be. Just a heads up, as part of our new organisational structure too, we're looking for 2 new members for our steering committee. I'm the current chair of the steering committee, and we have representatives from all of the universities which teach in the development studies space, and we also have associate members from Pacific universities and from Council for International Development and MFAT. And so we're looking for 2 more members, and they could be any of you sitting here, so think about that, whether you'd like to have a little bit more involvement in what we're doing. So just to let you know, much to our horror, we realised we'd have to come up with our own sort of theory of change for DevNet and have more structure than we'd ever had before, and as a result we came up with a bit of a plan which also resulted in 3 main threads to the work we're doing. DevNet events like these conferences, postgraduate research grants and prizes, and Pacific engagement and collaboration came in as a very strong one. So for the first 20 years or so of DevNet's existence, we mainly ran the conferences, had a website, and offered postgraduate field research awards, which MFAT funded, and MFAT usually supported our conferences too. Now MFAT have generously supported us, given us a 5-year block of funding, and so that we can do a range of things, many of which involve working more closely with our Pacific partners, and that is a direct result of having associate members from the Pacific, and Pacific members at our last DevNet conference at Massey as well, who asked for certain things, asked for more support in certain areas, and they've been asking at our steering committee meetings. So that's resulted in some different things. Maybe, Fung, you can speak to the grants we have up on offer.
So at the moment that you can see that we are open like 3 different grants, and here is under the Pacific Engagement and Collaboration that we have 2 grants now up and running. So Pacific Development Research Grant, this is the first year that we opened this grant. That's to address our Pacific colleagues, the need from Pacific colleagues, they need the grant to fund for their mid-career researcher and postgraduate student studying at the Pacific Island University. So the applications are now open. Please, I encourage you all that please share that information and encourage your Pacific colleagues to apply for it. And the second grant that we have, that Pacific Development Write-Up Grant, this is the second round that we run this grant. So again, that is, the idea is that we provide a small amount of funding, that's up to is 2,000 New Zealand dollars, that's to for the Pacific researcher, and they just need a little bit of more time, and they lack of resources to write up their research for publication. So then we can merit them up with mentor here in New Zealand, based in New Zealand. Then this grant is also open for application. So please share that information with your colleagues.
And so the mentoring is an optional add-on for those that wish to have a mentor. It's not a requirement of receiving a Pacific Development Research Write-Up grant. We have 3 recipients of those grants who have also joined us here in Tamaki Makaurau for the conference. It's Jerry and Anna and Sefa, and it's fantastic that they're able to be here, and it's also been great. Just a little thing about the research grants themselves. Many Pacific researchers said to us in Pacific Island universities they were doing lots of research on other people's research projects, and so they wanted to have the possibilities to just launch their own projects on things they really cared about. So these are not huge pots of funding, but they absolutely can enable some very interesting research to happen, and so we're looking forward to being able to support those. And on our selection committees, we obviously have our associate members from Pacific Island universities. And then there's the Postgraduate Development Field Research Awards, which have been running for a long time, and they have a closing date very soon. So if you're wanting to do master's or PhD research next year, now's the time to apply for support to fit this as field research. These things are all on the DevNet website as well, but Fung has kindly popped in some QR codes to easily get you there if that helps. The mentorship program, like I said, is an optional thing for those who want writing grants to complete a piece of research for publication. And how many articles went in earlier this year as a result of that?
One already published it, and 2 are under review and revision.
Okay, great. And so, but was it 8 that received? 6 received them. 6 received them. All of them had submitted the articles within a few months, and then they're going through the review process at the moment. So it's fantastic. So, like I said, we're looking for some representatives. Forum representative for postgrad and early career researcher, and a forum rep for independent development practitioner. So if you are a postgrad or early career researcher, would you like to sit on a committee with people from each of the 8 Aotearoa New Zealand universities, as well as those associate reps from Pacific universities, SID, MFAT, and there's also a few immediate past representatives from some of the membership types. We are supposed to, at this forum meeting, have these 2 new representatives, okay? So I'm hoping people won't be too shy and will consider putting their hand up. So is there anyone who's a postgrad and early career researcher who might be keen to do this?
And for 2 years.
Oh, it's a 2-year term. 4 meetings a year. That's online. That's how we meet. It's really not too onerous. Might be okay on a CV. Warwick's nodding, but I think he's not early career anymore. Yes. Oh, we've got a couple of people who are putting up hands. Okay. Have we got? We've got both Hannah and. Sorry, I don't know your name. Diana. And Diana. Okay. So. Do neither of you also fit into the independent development practitioner camp by any chance? No. Okay. So I'm not sure of what we're supposed to do when this happens, because this is the first time we've done this, and we've had 2 wonderful hands go up at the same time. I think we have to have at least 1 rep. It might be that we can have 2. So we'll approach both of you and work something out after today. Thank you very much for putting up your hands for that. Any independent development practitioner here that's interested? Oh, does an NGO person count as an independent development practitioner?
Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you very much, Phil. That's awesome. Right, If anybody is in opposition to any of those people, tell us quietly later on, okay? And we'll find a way to, in a manner-enhancing way, to not, make things go forward.
So I got Diana, and the second one I did not see.
Oh, Hannah. Okay, so fantastic. All right, that's really helpful, brilliant. And there is, yes, a very exciting announcement. Dun, 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 dun. I think you're supposed to do the music too, Warwick. Sorry. Announcement of the host of DevNet 2024. Very happy to say that Doug Hill and Otago University will be hosting the next DevNet. So you can absolutely look forward to that, and we really, really want you to provide feedback on this conference. Now, there was an alert that came out with the link, but it's not a live link, but you have been emailed in the last 10 minutes with the link to the survey. Feel free to go on your phones now and look that up and actually do fill out the survey for this conference, because that'll help us plan the next one. It's also asking you about, would you like an event in the off year of DevNet conference? The great thing is that next year we will be able to offer a one-day symposium of some type on a specific topic. So, you know, there've been some awesome themes at this conference, some very strong themes on decolonising development, locally led development and so forth. And so, you know, maybe there's ideas from that you'd like us to take forward. We on the steering committee will be listening to you. We want to hear your feedback and your ideas. There are a whole lot of possibilities for what we could do, but we will do something next year, some form of symposium, and then be awesome to be welcomed by Doug and the crew in Otago at 2024 for the next conference. So please do the surveys. That'll be really awesome. And is there anything I've missed, Fong? Okay, well, great. Well, can I please then just welcome everybody forward who's in the two teams for the great debate, along with Warwick, our MC. And just so you know, because I know some people will have taxis booked and so forth, directly after the great debate, there is prize giving and thank yous, and the conference will be completed.
Thank you very much, Reginald. It's lovely to see you again, as always. And what about a big round of applause for Reg? Hey, not bad. Excellent. How fantastic to see you all. A big round of applause for yourselves for making it this far. Come on. A big round of applause for Jessie for getting out of emceeing this event. Hey! And a big round of applause. I'll be introducing the members one by one very soon for the teams here, the positives and the negatives. Excellent. So, folks, this is obviously the most important part of the conference right here. We've got the great debate and a very important question to debate. My name's Warwick Murray. I'm the MC, which stands for Massive Chump. And I'm going to be running this like my own empire. I'll be making up the rules as I go along, and I will be distributing chocolate. I was going to keep it all, but in these post-colonial days, I thought I'd better give it out, call it aid, and expect nothing in return. So here we go. This is to get the energy.
No, we don't need it. Thank you very much.
I see. The affirmatives. Indeed, they have spoken. They have spoken. So this is obviously, they're taking bets for this debate on Betfred and all the other websites that I'm sure you all check out very often. And this is, in fact, it's proven to be as popular as the World Cup. Just without the human rights abuses and, of course, the exploitation of labour. Not that universities would exploit their labour, or NGOs, or government agencies, ever. of course. Anyway, I was just glad when you announced the next host of the DevNet, you didn't say Qatar. Anyway, okay, folks, now, what have we got here? Well, the motion is that the pandemic has been good for development in the Pacific. We're not going to deconstruct development here, although the individuals might. We're not going to deconstruct the Pacific here necessarily, but pandemic. You're referring to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regina? Yes? Not the TikTok pandemic? No? Okay, good, good. So the COVID-19 pandemic. And the rules are as follows. Each of the teams should elect democratically, a person to go first. And that person will present a 5-minute argument, followed by the negatives who will, the affirmatives go first, the negatives then, and then back across to the affirmatives, the negatives, the affirmatives, the negatives, and then the person that was elected as the representative of that group will then sum up in 2 minutes. Each person has 5 minutes. This is a white person from Australia and New Zealand giving advice on democracy to the Pacific. So I hope it's useful. I hope it's useful. Anyway, we have. Should we start negative or positive?
Up to you, honestly.
Let's go negative. We got Pauline, please. Put your hands together. We got Jane. And we got Chris. Fabulous dancer. And over here, on the affirmative, we have Leilani. We have Jerry. And we have another Jerry, Gerardius. Direct from Rome. Anyway, folks, if you'd like to select your first speaker, do you already know that? Okay, okay. And I'm going to be keeping time for you, and I'll give you a little ding-ding when you have a minute left. Okay? So we're going to begin then with Leilani. Leilani, you can use this microphone here, if you wish. Would you like to use it? You stand there. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Good luck.
Salof love everyone. My name is Leilani, as mentioned. I thought as a young undergrad student, I'd kick the boomers off, kick the millennials off, and have a go and explain it in layman's terms that I can understand. So I'm no comedian, and as you saw last night, my entertainment role, I'm officially retired now, so I'll leave the rest to the two Jerrys over there. So yeah, as mentioned, the topic for our debate is the pandemic that has been good for the development in the Pacific. We define the topic, as mentioned, as the COVID-19 pandemic, which we recognise has ongoing impacts, even now, and will focus on the development of the Pacific Island states. We, the affirmative team, believe that this statement is true. Woo! Yeah. So I know I've only been given 5 minutes, but the fact that most of our masters and PhD students couldn't fit their 10-minute presentations into 10 minutes, I'm a bit scared, so we'll see how we go, eh? So I'm going to discuss the following points. So number one is expanding on development has been catalysed and further galvanised by consulting with the past, as mentioned by Aliala, to structure, refocus and realign our development. Two, the significance of the vanua as a tool for building more resilient and sustainable futures in socio-cultural contexts in the Pacific. So as to my first point, development is not necessarily about going forward. So from the credible source of Google Images, I saw a quote that if you want to move forward, you must often look back in order to remember where you come from and where you want to go. So during the COVID-19 lockdowns, many Pacific islands shut their borders for 2 years. This saw tourism come to a complete stop, which for many relied on them for their income, for their livelihoods, and for their survival. As found in Api and Regina's research in wellbeing and tourism, this brought a time of rest, recovery, revitalisation, and reconnection, where people were able to unlearn tourism-related skills and relearn the traditional and cultural knowledge and skills as well. So this was meaning that they were not able to rely on foreign tourists, but saw reinvigoration of traditional livelihoods and communal livings where people realised that their value and worth was worth more than the tourism industry defined it to be. So this catalysed even more localised knowledge, projects, research, and seen us begin, or even already begin, to flip the narrative. We are not only here to develop industries like tourism in the Pacific Islands, but that those same industries and systems must put Pacific peoples at the forefront of development schemes and vacate more seats at the table, so that going forward we include more voices that need to be heard and understood. So going forward, I feel like the pandemic provided a crucial time where Pacific peoples had time to remember what is important to them, who they are as resilient and innovative communities, taking a few steps back to come forward now with their culture, knowledge, and Indigenous well-being to carry their personal development and learning identity of culture into the conversations and systems that they engage in. So this relates to the Samoan proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. So this shows that collaboration can even overcome the hardest of obstacles. So my second point is the significance of the Vanua, our land, our people, our culture, and Indigenous knowledge, which, as many of you know, is inextricably linked. I recognise that development, especially in the Pacific, draws on many different aspects of well-being. The Vanua, different contexts and environments as well. However, the Vanua has played a key role in allowing our Pacific peoples to adapt and pivot, not only now, but back in historical times as well, and that the COVID-19 pandemic was only another obstacle in which we were able to become even more resilient. So drawing on Api and Regina's work again, many respondents in their qualitative research noted the environmental revitalisation, with fish coming back, with plants going again, and they even relied on the land for their money, their food, their livelihoods, their survival. They didn't even need tourism. They were able to survive on their own, with their own land that they already had and will have. Sorry, a bit nervous here. Not really used to lecturing people that are older than me. I'm used to sitting over there, so just take a breath for a second. Don't know how you guys do it, honestly. Oh, thank you. Anyways, get back to my point. So it was this reverse migration and reconnection that being close to the land and sea and other people brought more development to our Pacific communities in terms of remembering who they are and where they come from. Pacific people's diets became healthier, they began exercising more, they spent more time with family, and even though their financial well-being suffered, this was offset by the social and cultural aspects of well-being. It was no longer work that defined their personal development, but they were able to control it and prioritize what they wanted to spend time with and who they wanted to spend time with. Both of these points illustrate the importance of remembering and practicing Indigenous practices and knowledge, to not leave them behind, but to proudly carry them into tomorrow. It also highlights how businesses, governments, and Pacific nations must work alongside crucial Pacific individuals and communities who are truly the backbone of development. Ultimately, the Pacific did bring positive development to the Pacific. As the Samoan proverb says, I'll try my best, I'm a bit plastic, but tautua nei mo so tai manuia a tai au. Serve now for a better tomorrow. Pacific people should not be the only ones serving others. The institutions, systems, and organizations must also serve the people. And the discussions from this conference and the existing work in the Pacific are a testament to this. Whaftai lava.
Thank you very much, Leilani. That was one of the best papers of the conference, don't you think? Seriously. And you're going to be a fantastic lecturer, because you're going to be a fantastic lecturer, and also because you go off point slightly, which is what we always do. You know, I'm doing it now. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Leilani. Excellent. And now, not that there's any pressure. And now, all the way from MFAT, dancing his way, we've got Chris. It's all yours.
Oh, it's slightly daunting from down here, isn't it? Yeah, I thought I might just start with a few disclosures. So can this not cut into my 5 minutes, please? Although I will just say, just for awareness, if I do see the stop sign, I probably won't stop. But that's only because time is a Western colonial construct and I refuse to be confined by that. Oh, that's my time? Sala falava, everyone. It's a very real horror and pleasure to be part of the great debate. Oh, I feel like a bit of an egg kind of going after Leilani. But I'll do my best anyway. Oh, probably a disclaimer that any of my humor and / anything I say does not reflect the views of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. If you do have any issues, queries, or concerns for my health, please direct them to my lead advisor, Will Chisham, over there. So yeah, shall I actually try and kick into it as opposed to stall? So yes, we're here to discuss the idea today that the COVID-19 pandemic, to be explicit, was good for development in the Pacific. Before I go on to some of my substantive points, I'd like to address a couple of the very important points raised by our first speaker, Affirmative. She referred to the period, the break in tourism, as a time of rest and I think, I'll try and read my writing, revitalization, rehabilitation. Whilst I certainly admire her, I take her point and I admire her optimism, it does seem to gloss over the fact that I believe, possibly in Fiji, over 100,000 people lost their jobs as a direct result of the cease in tourism. And that many of our countries in the Pacific directly rely on tourism, whether rightly or wrongly, as a key and very important source of income, going directly into their coffers and enabling them to do a lot of the work that they need to do for our communities and our people. Gracious me. Sorry. So yeah, she also noted that this time enabled us to reflect on what is important. That's true, but I'm sure for many of us, the reflection was that money is unfortunately a necessity for living. Many of us, many in the Pacific come from intergenerational homes, and for many people, the requirement to serve the family comes first, and it should come first. But in a context where jobs are scarce and resources are sparse, while subsistence is a way to survive, it is not a way to thrive. And shifting downward doesn't quite sound like development to me. I also love that you acknowledge COVID-19 as a challenge, so can we win now? And I also think more broadly, the argument seemed to focus on this point of Pacific nations being able to do for themselves, which is absolutely valid. We are not here to debate the value of decolonization and indigenizing development practice and processes. However, I think there's a question to be raised here on whose role it is to source this and resource this. The developing role and accountability should be placed on those who are directly contributable and responsible for these disparate situations. They didn't ask for the neoliberal, Western-centric metrics to be applied to them. They just suffer the consequences of it. And those of us who are directly responsible should be extremely active and accountable through any season of change. Onto our substantive points. My team are seeking to cover 3 broad areas of discussion. I will address the question of education and the direct impacts COVID-19 had on this area. And my learned colleagues over here will be discussing the economic impacts and the impacts on health. So to my substantive points, I believe it was in our gender plenary that Audrey quite rightly pointed out that there is now an entire generation of girls in some areas of the Pacific who have left the education system and won't return. I think in papers by the Lowy Institute, they refer to the lost decade, which is where they estimate that development progress has, I think, been reduced by 10 years. This was an initial policy paper in 2020 and now has been reiterated recently in their findings. This leads to some seriously cumulative impacts in terms of the severe impediment to education, which is a fundamental piece of architecture in supporting people development in anywhere, but particularly in the Pacific. There are such incredible, bright, vibrant minds. They need the support that education can do. And unfortunately, they need the doors that education can open. Whether rightly or wrongly, that's how we get them. I also wanted to make a point here about how the pandemic exposed and heightened the digital divide. I'm sure many of you who are far more learned than I in development stuff are aware of the digital divide, kind of referring to the way in which scarcity of technology and access to Wi-Fi, even electricity, is a severe impediment to the best of times in an increasingly modernized environment. But in a context where there's sudden shutdowns and very little time to prepare, students were now having to connect with data, with shonky Wi-Fi, out in the regions where electricity can actually be difficult and be rationed. In fact, even here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, I was a mentor at the time when COVID first hit, and our first role was to engage with our students. Some were fine, it's true, but many others were sharing one piece of technology amongst 5 kids who all had education requirements. Some had variable access to Wi-Fi because they lived so rural. These are real challenges that have actively inhibited the pursuit of education, which we know to be a fundamental driver for enabling growth and prosperity. Also, I'm sure many of you would be aware that whilst COVID was a time to pause, for some it actively heightened kind of the precarity of mental health issues, things like the deep feelings of isolation, being removed, especially for those who were removed from home and couldn't return, those who were living by themselves. And to be in such a tight, compressed environment is extremely damaging to life in general, let alone the educational journey. And those that we didn't lose to just the digital divide, we lost them to the very real requirements around them. They still had rent to pay. They still had laves to pay. They still had contributions to their family to make. So many of them went into work to support their families. Many of them took over the roles of core primary caregivers so that they could release their parents, their grandparents, their aunties and uncles to provide. But how do we reconcile that lost time? True, some of them can come back and absolutely the door will always be open. But the reality is that time is lost, that momentum has been ceased. And that has ramifications whether we like it or not. I guess I just want to close by reiterating that whilst it could seem like education is just one facet of the equation, we know that things aren't directly linear, and we know that things are intersectional. Impacts to education will have ramifications for all sort of components of life, and that's something we should be deeply, deeply conscious of and deeply aware of. And one of the last things I just kind of wanted to reflect on was, I find the wording of the moot interesting. It refers to this idea of has been, assuming as though the pandemic is something that we can forget. But we know that in the case of Tuvalu and recently Niue, the pandemic has done anything but leave, particularly for our region, where we are needed most, where we are called to serve best. So yeah, I guess broadly in closing, the challenge is, are our frames correct? Are our insights calibrated to the right metrics? And in closing, all I can say is that the negating team do not believe this moot should stand.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your heartfelt and very well put together thoughts. No, really. Some excellent points on which we should all reflect. We're having a bit of fun here, but of course it's very serious fundamentally as well. Sorry, no. You did the right thing. You'll get the votes, you see. No, but seriously. Anyway, so we're going to go back now to the affirmative team. And I believe that next is Jerry from University of Papua New Guinea. So, I beg your pardon. Sorry. From University of Solomon. Welcome, Jerry.
I think I'll take the chocolates now. Okay, that was a really tough one from Chris. Okay. I think what Chris stated was very true, and that's a tough one to rebut. But I think there are two levels to development. There is the visible part, and then there is the intellectual part, the change, the perspective part, where yes, things can go wrong, things can happen, but hey, that's COVID-19. It was unprecedented, and the impacts had been felt everywhere. But I think the bigger takeaway we should have is the mentality change that the pandemic gave rise to most Pacific Island countries. And my 2 points I'm going to share today will be based on that. So I think those are the two aspects to development. There's the hard and the soft, and I would like to focus on the soft part. Okay. Okay, for my part, I think the COVID-19, in the aftermath of the pandemic, it was very good for us local consultants. There wasn't much competition from outside. Yeah, I think most of us were praying the borders will remain closed, but it's open now. But that aside, I think that leads to my first point, which is on empowerment. I think the pandemic showed and empowered the locals. I think um, Jane, I believe, in one of the talkbacks, she was talking about empowering the Pacific Islanders, and the pandemic was a way, or was a means of empowering local Pacific Islanders. And I was using the local context of Solomon Islands, but I believe the theme would be same with the other Pacific Islands as well. Yeah, and uh, as similar with the unprecedented COVID-19, the manner in which the consultancy jobs were handed out by UN, the government, was also unprecedented as well. So yeah, I think that was empowerment, empowerment for locals, and that is not consultants alone. It goes for other sectors as well, and it gives. It kind of gives, in former U.S. President Barack Obama's words, yes, we can do it. So that kind of mentality. And that leads me to, sorry, I'm shaking. I'm nervous, very nervous as well. Okay, and that leads me to my second point as well, which is on dependency syndrome. I think before the pandemic, the main mentality that exists was if something goes wrong, well, someone will come and help us. That was the mentality. But the pandemic revealed the negative side of that perspective or that perception. Now we know that no one will come and help us. Yeah? We have to do it ourselves if we, yes, with help from outside, but then we have to be the frontliners in any development aspects and in anything that occurs within the country. So that was a mentality change. And then using some examples from the Solomons, you started to see bold decisions being made, which was not made before, from the national government down to the community level. And when I said bold decision, I'm not referring to the famous dumping of Taiwan and befriending China. No. I'm referring more into, like the government has a redirection policy, and it has much emphasis on commercial farming. And as first speakers had mentioned, subsistence farming, you cannot thrive on that. And I think that's the realization with the government now. And you can see massive, strategies put in place, trying to get commercial farmings, trying to, work out the supply chain so that it starts from the outgrowers to the farms and then export to Australia, New Zealand, or elsewhere. Yeah? So you start to see things you've never seen before starting to take root. And even there are other things like hygiene was the last in our agenda in previous years, but then now you can see people start to embrace hygiene. You see schools starting to put what do you call it, the sanitizer? Yeah, something you never seen before, or something they never want to spend before on. Yeah, so those kind of mentalities, and I think that mentality change is important because it won't take overnight. I know that, but it has to start somewhere, and the pandemic gave a perfect opportunity for change, for that change to start. That mentality saying, "Oh, we cannot just wait, yeah? We have to do something ourselves, and when help comes, but then it's to build on what we are already trying to start." So I think from my argument, I think that was the most important thing I observed, and I lived it as well, that there's a shift, there's a re-engineering in how people start to think, and you start to think, see things starting to go differently. I presented about logging here, but then the actual fact is people starting to want to go away from that practice, and that's the mentality change as I'm talking about there. Yeah, so my main argument would be development has two aspects, and one of it is the mentality change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Fantastic. Now we'll move along nice and quickly. We're going. Yes. Yes, I know.
Excuse me.
Oh. You want some chocolate?
No. Okay, right. Thank you, Jerry. That was inspirational. Trying to find my timer, but you will give me some notice because otherwise I will be here till dinner. Has anybody got a timer? I'm not good at this.
It's a colonial construct. I'm not allowed to. Where do I put my things?
Here's your hat. Okay, Jane Lattimore, Manaki Whenua, thank you so much for persisting. I was hoping you'd all have gone home by now. Sadly not. I was dragged into this, by the way. This is not a volunteer situation. Okay, so thank you, Leilani and Jerry. That was really good. Some strong points there. We were discussing earlier, we're wondering about for whom this has been good. And I see that all of you here who've worked in development based in New Zealand, oh, we all had a great time on Zoom. It was fine. You could, go to work in your pajamas and connect with the Pacific, and, that was excellent. But what about our Pacific partners? This is whom we're really worried about. And I want to talk to you about aspects of the economy, aspects to do with agriculture, the environment, fisheries, forestry, and things that have come up over the last couple of days, like data. Do we have any evidence? Who was monitoring our seas? Not our seas, the seas of our Pacific nations. Who was out there taking what they wanted without any eyes? Because whilst things were not great here in New Zealand, things were even worse in the Pacific. And we were all worried about our own futures. And remember, this wasn't some, oh, let's go on sabbatical and have a nice holiday for a couple months. We had no idea how long we were on this enforced lockdown holiday. And some of us, our salaries got paid. Pacific salaries did not in often cases. They are heavily reliant on the donor funding, whether that's coming in through projects or through various industries, through consultancy. And I know for certain that some of our in-country partners were absolutely flat out flogged to death, and this was no joy. And as Chris has told you, there was a lot of stress in the household, and people did go back to villages. Every country we work with is a net importer of food. Yes, you can grow a few plants in your back garden, but I don't know about you. I can grow $20 tomatoes in my back garden. I am not a commercial grower. I can't feed a big family just like that when I didn't grow anything before. So these are not, this sounds great in theory that, oh yes, we'll all just dig up the back garden and plant some food, but you need plant material, you need seeds, you need know-how. Things grow quickly in the Pacific, and so do pests and diseases, and they will romp through your produce faster than you can grow it and harvest it. So the agriculture sector was under serious challenge, not to mention the fact that a lot of their labor was here picking our fruit in our lockdowns and in Australia. So where was that labor? And you've got hardworking mums at home with their kids and all the extended family, and they're having to earn the money, provide the produce. Doesn't sound like a has been good for development situation to me. Now let's talk about the environment. For all the ills of international development, we are there supporting them with managing life on land, SDG 15. These things are vital that we help them access climate finance. In order to access climate finance, you need to know how things are going with monitoring biodiversity. If you don't have support from outside, which you cannot get by Zoom very effectively, it's very difficult to progress those positions for your island countries. to understand, to have the evidence that enables you to participate in those international initiatives. Also, biosecurity. Those weeds don't care about global pandemics. They are romping through faster than anything else. We also lack the opportunity for a lot of on-the-job training. You can't do a lot of that by Zoom. It just doesn't work. And we've heard about the bandwidth issues from Chris, and you'll hear more about that from Pauline, especially when it comes to delivering remote education. So, in summary, in my position around agriculture, environment, and labour and the economy, I think it was, if we had the data, if we had the monitoring that really did sum up what the impact was, you would all agree with me. It has not been good for the Pacific. I'm not saying some things haven't come out of it, but I find it very challenging for you to sit there and want to win this debate.
Whoa. Whoa. Okay, thank you, Jane. Blimey. You're not going to push me again, are you? Brilliant. And now then, we get to the last round of speakers before we then ask the leaders of the groups to sum up their position. And then, of course, we're going to hand it over to the great public of the great debate. In between those times, we'll be passing around the chocolate, by the way, in the spirit of aid donation. Nothing expected in return. Nothing. Don't want your votes or anything. Anyway, we have next up from Massey and, well, Massey really, Gerardius Princius. Gerard Princem. Come on. Stop.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Bonjour. I'd like to start with one of the comments of my esteemed colleague on this side. We are worried about the Pacific partners. They need us. They don't get our pesticides, our tourists. They're going to go hungry, roofless. Who is going to solve their problems without us as consultants? Honestly, I'm not making it too bad. I could go on, but I'll stop here.
Go on.
I would like to take a serious note as well to start off with. When we talk about decolonization, we talk about liberation. There's a lot of people who have been writing about decolonization just after colonization began, actually. And I'd like to remind us of a few, like Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator, Andrea Dworkin, an American feminist, Frantz Fanon, thinking about different ways in which colonialism and repression gets into the minds of those at the bottom of the power scale. And that starts with a woman thinking, oh God, I need a man, otherwise who's going to protect me from the other man? That's pretty dramatic. It's a Pacific Island person who thinks, oh, I need a white consultant to solve my problem with the pests in my garden, in my backyard, because I'm quite sure in Hamilton they have the same problems. It doesn't work like that. Liberation, development, decolonization, they're all the same words, and they start in the mind, in the soul of the person who has less power. If we think the pandemic has set us back 10 years, we lose sight of what my esteemed colleagues here have said is the pandemic was a huge problem, is a huge problem. It's not over yet, yes, but we can overcome it. We can do it. As Jerry said, we can solve this problem. As Leilani said, this is just another problem. If we look into the history of the Pacific, they dealt with lots of problems. Every community in the Pacific has its stories of how they overcame adversity. That's the story of human beings. That's the story of community. So if we sit back and cry because we've been worse off now because of the adversity, we've lost it. Development, decolonization starts with thinking in terms of we can do this. We do not need others. That's for a start. I just got started, imagine that. I'll take two serious arguments to the surface then, or more professional ones. Leilani gave a perspective from Samoa, Jerry from the Solomon Islands. I'll take a sort of an outsider, a Palangi perspective if you want. I'll focus on stuff that I know. My middle name is Indicator. I'll look at indicators. Fascinating stuff happens in this field. Bear with me and indulge me for a moment. In 2019, the headline in a report was, let me ask you, what do you think was the most vulnerable country on the planet Earth by the World Risk Index in 2019? What country was number one? Vanuatu. What country was number two? Tonga. I mean, if you were living in Vanuatu or Tonga, you were at the cusp of extinction. You had no chance. Disaster was coming for you and you were hopeless. That was the argument in the World Risk Index, made by knowledgeable German universities, paid for by the German government, and used by all the UN bodies to determine where we should help these poor people. So Vanuatu and Tonga were receiving lots of help because they were really pathetic, little, powerless against the waves that were coming towards them, whatever it was going to be. The interesting thing is, academics sometimes are honest. Oh, let me just one more thing. New Zealand, by the way, in that table in 2019, was in the top 20. Resilient, strong, it's almost invincible, right? Throw at us whatever we have. The number 8 wire, we can do this, no matter what. We are rich, we're creative, we're a solid community. Nothing stops New Zealand. Here we go. But Vanuatu, they're gone, right? Then the pandemic happened. Researchers, academic researchers, sometimes can be honest. What they did in Germany is like scratch their heads and looked at what happened in New Zealand in 2020, 2021, and what happened in Vanuatu and Tonga. And they said, actually, we have it wrong. New Zealanders were fighting each other over toilet paper. There was nothing in the cupboards. The supermarkets are running out of food. There's no public transport. That same level of panic did not happen in the Pacific. We can consider resilience and dealing with adversity in different ways. What the Germans acknowledged is that they had been making this world risk annex, this world risk table, ranking countries on some of the wrong assumptions. So they reorganized their World Risk Index. The 2022 World Risk Index was published a couple of weeks ago. And what do you know? Who do you think was on position 41? So pretty high up as vulnerable. New Zealand. Who do you think was in position 49? Vanuatu. Where do you think Tonga was? Number 100. So the whole table was turned upside down if you look at the Pacific. Something has changed. The pandemic has now proven irrefutably through a world index made by scientists in Germany that Vanuatu is more resilient, stronger, able to deal with adversity than New Zealand. That's a pretty bad indictment for Aotearoa. We should just pull up our pants, pull up our wallet, and ask a few Vanuatu consultants to come and advise us on how they got where they are. Do I have 1 minute? Half a minute. Last thing, what the pandemic has proven is that the impossible policies can be possible. I was at a conference in August 2019. There was a scientist, New Zealand scientist, Nick Wilson. He presented some findings on what to do in case of a pandemic. And his advice was, we should consider closing the borders. He calculated the cost of that. And everyone laughed. There was a large conference in Wellington. It was about 150 people. And 145 of them shook their heads like, this Nick Wilson fellow, he's lost the plot. New Zealand will never, ever, jamais close its borders. It cannot be done. Imagine the tourism, the flow, the supply chain. It can't be done. And yet it was possible. Only a few months later, the New Zealand government did what everyone said was impossible. We can start policies to deal with problems if we acknowledge the problem is big. We've got climate change. Why can't we decarbonize our economies rapidly? Not in a 50-year plan, but in a 5-year plan. It is possible. And what the pandemic has proven is that if we just put our minds to it and acquire the courage, we can do it. In that sense, we acknowledge the pain that the pandemic has caused to many families in the Pacific. But for development as an idea, for self-confidence, we can do this. The pandemic has been very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Made by scientists in Germany. Absolutely brilliant. But, wow, okay. Now, Pauline from UPNG, we're going to give you a little more time because Gerard had a little more time there, just to be fair. Gerard? You don't mind, do you? Good. So please, Pauline, come and let us know what you think.
Me futa lareva, good afternoon na ipla olgeta, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a difficult place to be up here. My colleagues on both for and against, I think, have covered many of the points that I would have liked to cover. But I'd like to emphasize a little bit in education and health. Education experiences were such that in the Pacific we were very much disconnected at the point in time when COVID hit, and no one was prepared for such a crisis or disaster. And so everyone was disconnected. We had, I would think or state that the costs and budgets for education really increased because this situation was unbudgeted for. There were isolation for many families. Students were actually led to withdrawing. Some even failed exams for the second part of the year because COVID had thrown them into off balance. People lost jobs as well. Incomes were not there to support families, and businesses also lost. The smaller businesses lost, and they locked down and minimized most of their businesses. And many families also lost loved ones. Referring to the current states of WHO, there were, from January 2020 to 8 December, the global report states that there were 642,924,560 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 6,625,029 deaths. This is like 8 December 2022, WHO is reporting. And many of us experienced that in many different ways. And in this room, I note that we are all laughing, but when it was at that point in time, no one could laugh about it. And we were all put in such a situation that, what do I do next? Who's gonna help me? And if you are looking at, from the Papua New Guinean perspective, we have people who live in town in the cities. We have people who live in the rural kind of semi-developed places, suburbs or districts. And then we have people who are right down to the village. Many of us were affected in many different ways, but I think that COVID-19 was no good for contemporary business, but it was good for us culturally because it binded us together and it brought us the resilience of local people to be together, although there were very negative impacts on education and health because our health systems and infrastructure was stretched and we were struggling. And so these figures for Papua New Guinea is, WHO confirmed them as 46,374 confirmed cases, of which 668 deaths were reported in the last few days. And so COVID, I would throw a question to my colleague and the last speaker. Would he have been able to live in a rural village in Papua New Guinea during the time of COVID? And this is where I will, leave everyone thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for reminding us of the seriousness of this. And of course, thank you to all the speakers. So incredibly diverse and thoughtful, well put together, some at the last minute, but very well put together sets of arguments there. So a round of applause for all the speakers so far. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now what we're going to ask is that the leaders of the groups, and that being Chris and Leilani, are going to summarize their group's argument in no more than 3 minutes, but I'm aware it's a colonial construct, so it can. And we're going to invite we'll invite the negatives first. Now, by the way, after this, we'll be judging the winner, and the prize, it's very graciously donated. I'm not sure, by the zoo, perhaps, is a dinosaur. Of course, we've got to get it into 3, so if anybody's got a dinosaur... Sorry. Anyway, Chris, could you please come and sum up for your team? Thank you very much. Round of applause for Chris.
I will broadly try to stick to time, but my eyes are here most of the time, so if I don't see you, it didn't pass, right? Yes, I just want to firstly acknowledge everyone for sitting through the debate and putting up with my ramblings. I'm very acutely aware that I'm 10 months deep into my job, and I had no idea what development was until I came into my role. So I'm deeply humbled to be here today and to just glean the collective knowledge that is housed here today. And from every single person, not just from the speakers and those who shared in keynote, but to just the collective wisdom from all of you. It's certainly left an impression on me, and I'm very grateful to you all. I too was voluntold for this, so you got what you got. I'm not gonna not put too fine a point on it. But I suppose in closing, I would return briefly to our arguments and then kind of close with a few thoughts. So as I said, we do not believe that the pandemic was good for Pacific development. We've covered how, in terms of education, we now face the prospects of a lost generation of development. A lost decade of development and a lost generation, particularly for girls who we know are a key focus area and how education can support empowerment. In terms of economy, we've seen that it has exacerbated threats to existence, let alone subsistence styles of living, and to broader support for family. And in health, we've seen the impacts of a stretched workforce who are facing burnout and who face extreme challenges to both capacity and infrastructure and capability. I just kind of wanted to return to an idea, I guess, that we've been dancing around a little bit, which is the theme of the conference, kind of decolonization and locally led development and partnering. And it made me thought of a couple whakatauki, but it made me think of this one first, which is mā whiro mā pango ka oti te mahi, which can be roughly translated to with red and with black, the work shall be done. And I guess why I'm thinking about this is because I have this overarching question. There's a supposition here that in our absence, the Pacific can pick up the work that's being done on development. Whilst we are not seeking to argue against this, there's a question here. They cannot, of absolutely resilience in the Pacific is extraordinary. The capacity to overcome the stories, the legends, the legacies that live on in our families and in our stories, our songs, our dances, live forever. What about questions of climate change, for instance? What about when there is a clear sense of complicity in what is occurring? Why must the Pacific pay the price when they're already paying the costs for colonization? When they're already paying the cost for our presence in that region? We're not here to necessarily discuss today how we do our work. We're here to argue about whether or not the pandemic was beneficial or not to Pacific development. And we affirm that it was not beneficial to Pacific development. We're not saying anything about co-opting decision-making, displacing constructions, or removing indigenous structures, systems of knowledge. We're here to talk about what we're doing and how the pandemic brought a severe disruption to our programs, to our support, that not always, but often is asked of us and is an expectation of us. As has been highlighted by many, when we claim the whanaunga connections to the Pacific, when we talk about our deeply held ties, that cannot be just lip service. And that will be borne out in the effect of what we do in the region. I mean, how then, if we are comfortable with the idea that the pandemic was good for development, how do we justify then massive job loss, educational compromise, severe economic challenge, and to be complicit in its escalation and do nothing? Decolonization should not be an incidental occurrence because of outside events. It can, should, and must be an intentional choice, always, with thought and effort into every aspect. And the question is, if not development, then what? If not us, then who? If not now, then when? I close with another whakatauki, a thought from Princess Te Puia Herangi. Me ka moemoe au, ko au anake. Me ka moemoe a tātou, ka taia e tātou. If I dream alone. If we dream together, it can be done.
That's Chris there, the future director of the newly autonomous New Zealand Aid section of MFAT. Thank you, Chris. That was beautiful. And I'm sure equally beautiful will be Leilani, who's probably going to be Vice-Chancellor of Massey University at some point. So please, Leilani, if you'd grace us with your final argument. Thank you.
Talofa lava again, everyone. Yeah, as Chris mentioned, I'd just like to, while I have the stage, to thank everyone. What a true honour and privilege it has been to be here. Noticing that, as one of the young people in the room, that there's a need for our young people to be here as leaders of today and of tomorrow. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone, but also challenge you as lecturers and as academics, how are you socialising your information and sharing that to the younger generations? Please don't forget that we are here and we are useful and we are voicing our concerns. Chris is like maybe 9 or 10 months. I'm just a month into my summer scholarship. So very new to this space, but very thankful that you guys all welcome me also. Just a huge thank you again to DevNet and everyone else here today. To conclude, we strongly believe that the pandemic has been good for development in the Pacific. Development is not a stagnant construct that has been argued by the negative team, and it does not stop, but it continues to flow like our people and our oceans. Development is not done alone, as we may have argued in the Pacific, but our oceans connect us beyond our borders and our global community whom have the capacity to help Pacific development. Our points were remembering who we are, empowerment of locals and consultants, our independence and resilience as Pacific nations overall. All of these points speak to the resilience and independence of our Pacific islands in the South Pacific, but also our connections to everyone around us. I think you guys forgot my whole argument of who we are. We actually know our land, we know our people, we know our culture. And so unlike growing fancy tomatoes, Jane, we can actually grow gullo and we can get fish from the sea, and we can actually make some really nice falsi, nicer than the one last night. I don't know what that was. That was to be honest. We feed our families, and we're not just individualistic like the Western societies here in New Zealand. We feed each other, we share our resources, and we help each other between generations. We develop together. Despite the digital divides, the prominence of tourism, the need for looking out for our Pacific partners, the inequities in education and health, our abilities to collaborate, communicate, and collectively action has seen us progressively work towards addressing these issues. Although they may have inhibited the development of the Pacific to an extent within the period of the time of the pandemic lockdowns in the Pacific, they have not completely stopped development. We will always be connected to our Pacific cultures and people, even though it may not be physically, as mentioned, but we are spiritually and mentally connected. We, as Indigenous people, carry our Indigenous culture and knowledge with us everywhere we go. As Pauline mentioned, and thank you for supporting our argument, by the way, COVID was actually good, as it bounded us together culturally. To counter the negative team's points of the challenges to development, if everything was easy, then why would we need a change? The pandemic provided challenges, yes, but they also provided many opportunities to notice the many existent inequities, but also the recent inequities that have developed as a result of COVID-19. Our Pacific nations were not the only ones to notice it. Our neighbours did too, New Zealand and Australia. But as Gerardius mentioned, we may not have had the financial capacity, but we certainly have the drive, the will, the passion to develop within not only our own nations, but beyond our Pacific jurisdictions. Yes, the pandemic impacts are still very much alive and present, but we have not given up the fight, and we will not let colonial organisations or constructs override our voices and our stories. We are here, we are still fighting, we are developing in new ways every day, and we will continue to advocate for positive Pacific development into the future. In one of the many articles again that Dr. Api Salome and Dr. Regina wrote, they said something along the lines of, Pacific peoples aren't just simply standing there and letting things change or develop, but they are actively trying to find new ways of living and surviving, and most importantly, developing. And so, to conclude, 685 always on your speakers, and
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you both very much. That was very moving and thoughtful and thought-provoking and just wonderful. Thank you very much. So now it's time for you folks to put democracy into action and vote. And I think the best way to vote, can you do that, that noise you just made there? The Chihoi again, please. It's like this. So we're going. Yeah, well done. Bless you. Whoever's got the, we'll start. We'll go from team to team, and whoever provokes the most Chihoi. Is that the plural? I think that's the plural. Will win the dinosaur. So let's begin, shall we, with the negatives. As many Chihois as you feel they deserve, please. Woohoo is perfectly substitutable only in this case. Let's try that again, shall we? Okay, good, good. And over here, for the affirmatives, the positives. Woohoos and Chihois, please. Oh, sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. Can you do that again, please? Hold on a minute. Let's go again over here. No, what was it over here? And over here? So, folks, a round of applause to the winners, the affirmatives. Over here. Whoa! Who'd have thought that? Who'd have thought that? Congratulations, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the great debate. We've got the closing of the conference now, so stay where you are. Thank you. I'll put them by the door. Oh, where's you?
Yeah, where's our dinosaur?
Okay. Are you going to do these, Warren? Okay, but pass some around. People have them out. They'll
Probably not.
Oh, yeah.
Good man.
Oh, Leilani. Oh, you're doing all teams together? Okay, all teams together.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Okay, well.
All right, chat on 3.
Thanks, guys.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, while everyone's taking their seats again, got 2 book awards for winners of the question that was by the Mana of the Pacific book. For those of you who don't know about this, we've heard a lot about whakatauki from the 2 debate teams today. Thank you very much for bringing up whakatauki. This book is a celebration of the wisdom of Pacific peoples through whakatauki and photographs, a lot of them by Pedram Purnia, who you know of. Api and I compiled it. It's not our knowledge, it's not our wisdom, though. So any proceeds from the book go back into the Pacific, just so that you know that, into resilience building efforts and communities. But anyway, the question that was asked was, which Pacific country has 3 times been in the top 5 countries in the Global Happy Planet Index in the last few years? And many of you got that correct. And the answer was that same country that was the most vulnerable in the world, apparently, back in 2019. It was Vanuatu. So well done, everyone who got that right. And just another way in how we measure development matters, right? What indicators we're using, etc. So that the 2 names that were drawn out, though, were Sefa here. If he's not, Anna, if I give it to you, you can either give it to Sefa or, just, we don't have to mention to Sefa. Thank you very much. They've both come over from USP, so well done to Sefa. And Olivia from University of Auckland. Is Olivia here still? Oh, great, you are. shout out to Olivia too. She submitted her PhD thesis the day before the conference.
With the first prize winners, okay. One of the great pleasures of attending DevNet conferences is watching our students self-actualize into early career scholars. And as a teacher in development studies and a participant in these conferences and supporting our students, it's just a wonderful space to watch our students present their own research and share their success in the work that they're doing. And so as part of that, DevNet supports the awarding of Best Presentation Awards. And if you saw in the program, we had an MA section and we had a PhD section. So we have two categories. For each session, we had two judges. And I was not one of the judges, but I convened the event. So I'd like to start, I'd like to present, and just a further note, I was really excited to learn that we have the budget to award 3 prizes in each category, which was new information. So we're gonna spread the love around and share in our students' success right now. I'm gonna start with our master's students. And before I announce the winners of the master's student session, I'd like to convey on the judges' behalf. The judges were Maria Borovnik from Massey University and Natalie Slade from MFAT. And on their behalf, and I was also in the room to observe, I can attest that the level of scholarship and superlative work that was shown in the room for that session was outstanding. And for that reason, the judges had a very difficult set of decisions to make. So, for the 3 that we are celebrating, that's great, but for the 3 whose names will not be called, please know that we're also celebrating you here now as well. Let me get right to it and announce the 3rd place winner for her presentation titled Justice for the Displaced, The Story of Banaba, goes to Katya Putarak-Sanush. I'm handing out gift bags full of chocolate, but they also have a gift card in them, so don't lose it. In 2nd place, with her presentation titled Sand Mining, the Practice Leading the World into Crisis, the 2nd place award goes to Annalise O'Sullivan-Moffett. And our first prize winner for his presentation titled The Challenges of Climate Change Adaptation for Displaced Communities, the Bikini Community on Kili and Edgeot Island, Adam Fraser. Our first place winners in each category also earn a copy of Man of the Pacific. So, all right, moving on to the PhD category. The judges for this session were Philippa Smallis from Volunteer Services Abroad and Ward Friesen, Professor of Geography here at the University of Auckland. We thank them for their service. This was a longer session with a lot more competitors. And I have a couple of notes to share on each of the 3 names we're going to celebrate here this afternoon. So for our 3rd place student,
joined us virtually, so I'm certain he's not in the room with us now, but he might be online listening in, with his presentation titled Religious Rehabilitation of the Hijras, an Alternative Transgender Integration Model in the Global South. The third place award goes to Qazi Ashraf Uddin. The judges were impressed that he was able to share his presentation virtually, but on a very, very important and unique topic, and we were also celebrating with him that he had just managed to get ethics clearance for his PhD research. Okay. Next, in second place, for his presentation titled The Influence of Research on Policy and Programming, Insights from Bureaucrats and Professionals in the International Development Sector. This goes to Ujwal Krishna for his very, very engaging presentation. Thank you very much. And finally, the first place award for her presentation titled The Challenges of Climate Change Adaptation. Oh, excuse me, that was the master's. For her presentation titled The Institutional Account of Women Agency Amidst Disruption, Evidence from COVID-19 in Malawi, Maggie Peary. Is she still here? Ah, there you are. Thank you so much. It was truly wonderful to participate and observe these sessions. And if you get a chance to talk to them about their scholarship, please do engage with them. You can contact them through the conference app. Okay, it's time to close down, and I just would like to give a word of thanks to the many people that helped make this conference happen. First, let's have a big round of applause for our volunteers. They're all sitting up in the back, I think. And we shared some gifts with them off stage earlier. So thank you very, very, very much. And I would also like to offer our thanks to the members of the conference planning committee that worked really hard with me throughout the last 12 months to prepare this conference. And only 3 of the other members are present with us today, but it also includes Api Mavono, who put together the hub in Fiji. So we thank Api for his work. And for those who attended the welcome reception, Tracy Burno is a member of our steering committee, but she's been so busy both in preparing the reception and in her work at AUT in light of recent events there that she's been unable to join us at the conference, but we're really, really grateful for her support throughout the year with menu planning and all that stuff, but especially the reception that she planned and cooked for us 2 nights ago. So thank you, Tracy. But for our members that are present, I'd like to thank first Bex Ansel, who at this time last year, in December of last year, started working with me to sort of start thinking how we're going to do this thing. And she's been an incredible source of support. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not very good in the public-facing aspects of the work that we do in academia, and Bex was really right there to help me with finding keynote speakers, for instance, thinking outside the box in terms of sponsorships, and has just been an incredible source of support this entire year. So thank you all. Next, I'd like to thank Angela Wilton on our planning committee. Angela wears many hats, for those of you who already know her, but throughout the year, Angela, in the preparation for this conference, was incredibly helpful with conceptual thinking, helping review proposals that were coming in, building the program, poking and prodding us when we needed it, and we're so, so grateful for all the time and support she gave us, particularly in the last few months when it came to programming decisions and things like that. Thank you so much, Angela.
I'm going to give you
And finally, of course, I'd like to thank Regina Skavens, who's also on our planning committee. She's planned many of these conferences before. We've heard a lot about her achievements in development studies and geography last night at the dinner, and we were the beneficiaries of that knowledge and guidance all throughout the year in the planning of this conference. She was always coming to every planning meeting and always reminding us of best practice for these types of events. So we're also very thankful. Yes. And that's it. We are so grateful that you came and that you stayed with us this long. Please participate in the feedback survey that was just announced today. It will be open for a week, but the sooner you participate, the better, so we don't nag you with follow-up emails next week. And for those of you who are asking about the recordings of all the live streaming and so on, they are available to you as registered participants in this conference through the app. You'll be able to enjoy repeat viewings of all that we've enjoyed, or revisit sessions you may have missed because of competing events on our packed schedule. They're available for you for another month. And we'll be discussing archiving options beyond that, which we haven't decided yet. But apart from that, thank you all so very, very much. We hope you'll keep in touch. We hope you'll give us your feedback. And we look forward to Doug taking the reins and doing this in Otago 2 years from now. Thank you so much.
And a final huge round of applause for Jessie Hessen-Grayman, who's been amazing making this happen.